All right, let's dive into one of the biggest intellectual showdowns in all of history. We're talking about a philosophical battle between two absolute giants of the Enlightenment. And believe me, they completely changed the way we think about, well, reality itself.
But first, let me ask you a question, a simple one. How do you know for sure that the sun will rise tomorrow? And I mean, really know. Not just that you're pretty sure it will, or that it's a good bet, but how do you know with 100% certainty? Just hang on to that thought, because that question, it's the key to this whole thing.
So to really get this, we've got to travel back to the 18th century. This was the age of reason, and man, people were optimistic. The feeling was that science and logic were on the verge of solving everything. Humanity was building this grand temple of progress, and the very foundation of that temple was the belief that our knowledge was solid and reliable. And then, our two main characters show up. First, you've got the demolition expert, a Scottish philosopher named David Hume, who basically shows up with a wrecking ball and just smashes that beautiful temple to pieces. And then, right behind him, comes the master architect, a quiet German professor, Immanuel Kant, who sees the rubble and decides he's going to rebuild the whole thing, but this time on a foundation that can't be shaken. This is their story. Okay, let's start with Hume, the great disruptor. His ideas were so radical, so completely world-changing, that Kant himself said reading Hume is what woke him up from his dogmatic slumber. You see, Hume didn't just poke a few holes in old theories, he set off a philosophical earthquake. Hume's main weapon was something he called Hume's fork, and it's deceptively simple. He said, look, every single thought you have comes from one of two things. Either it's an impression, a direct, vivid sensation, like actually seeing the color red, or it's an idea, which is just a faded copy of that sensation, like remembering the color red. And his rule was absolutely ruthless. If you have an idea, any idea, you have to be able to trace it back to a direct sense experience. If you can't, the idea is totally meaningless.
And this is where he lands the knockout punch. Think about his famous billiard ball example. You watch a cue ball roll across the table. That's event A. Then it hits the 8-ball, and the 8-ball moves away. That's event B. But Hume asks this killer question. Where's the cause? You don't see it, you don't hear it or touch it, you see one event and then you see another. So where does this idea of cause and effect even come from?
Hume's answer was an absolute bombshell. That powerful feeling of certainty we have, the belief that A causes B. He says it's not a law of the universe at all. It's just a habit, a mental habit. In his words, custom, then, is the great guide of human life. We expect the sun to rise just because it always has before. We're not creatures of logic, we're creatures of habit. And just like that, poof, the foundation for all of science just turned to dust. So if Hume's right, all of science, everything we think we know, is just a good guess. And this is where Immanuel Kant storms onto the scene. He read Hume, had his crisis, and knew he had to save science from this crushing skepticism. And to do it, he came up with something so revolutionary he called it a Copernican Revolution for the mind.
You see, before Kant, everybody just kind of assumed it worked like this. The world is out there doing its thing, and our mind is like a passive mirror. It just reflects the world as it is. Knowledge is when our mind successfully copies what's out there. Simple enough, right?
While Kant completely flips this on its head, he says, hold on. What if we've had it backwards this whole time? What if the world as we experience it has to conform to the rules of our mind? It's not the mind passively reflecting the world. It's the mind actively building the world we perceive. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine you were born wearing a pair of green-tinted glasses that you could never, ever take off. After a while, you wouldn't walk around saying, wow, what a coincidence, the whole world is green. No, you'd eventually realize that the greenness isn't in the world itself. It's the filter you're forced to see everything through.
And that's exactly what Kant said about our minds. He argued that concepts like space, time, and yes, causality are those glasses. They're like the pre-installed operating system for the human mind. We don't learn about cause and effect from the world. It's a fundamental part of the software we use to process the world. Hume couldn't find causality out in the world because he was looking in the wrong place. It was inside our heads the whole time. So Kant saves the day, right? He makes causality a fundamental structure of the mind, and science is safe. But this debate between the skeptic and the architect, it's not over. Not by a long shot. In fact, you could argue it's more important right now than it's ever been.
So let's do a quick head-to-head. For Hume, all knowledge is purely from experience. Causation is just a habit. Even yourself is just a bundle of random perceptions. Certainty?
Forget about it. For Kant, knowledge is a partnership between your mind and experience. Causation is a built-in rule, and certainty is possible, but only within the world our mind creates.
Okay, that's a lot of philosophy. But you might be thinking, so what? Why does this dusty old argument from 250 years ago matter to me right now?
Well, the stakes are absolutely massive. If Hume is right, then all of science is just a useful story we tell ourselves, not a true description of reality. And morality? That's just a gut feeling, nothing more. But if Kant is right, then science really is built on a reliable, stable structure. And morality isn't just a feeling, it's a rational duty we can all understand and agree on.
And you see echoes of this debate everywhere today. I mean, every scientist who assumes a law of physics will work the same way tomorrow is making a Kantian bet. The whole field of AI development is basically a battle between Hume and Kant. Are we building machines that just find patterns, or can they truly understand cause and effect? Even our entire legal system, which is based on moral responsibility, really rests on a Kantian foundation.
But, and this is a huge but, Kant's brilliant solution came with a heavy price. To save our knowledge of the world we experience, he had to admit that we can never know what reality is really like, independent of our minds. He called this ultimate, unreachable reality the thing in itself. It's out there, but it's forever beyond our grasp.
And that leaves us with this final kind of chilling thought. By saving knowledge from Hume's skepticism, Kant might have also locked us inside our own heads. We can be certain about the world our mind builds, but we can never know for sure what's on the other side of those green-tinted glasses. We're the architects of our own reality, but maybe, just maybe, we're also its prisoners.